It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their non-linear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life when you're 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find the link for in the show notes. My guest today is Elaine Taylor Klaus. Elaine is a globally recognized thought leader at the intersection of neurodiversity, coaching, and parenting. As co-founder of ImpactParents.com, which was formerly called Impact ADHD, she pioneered neurodiversity-informed coaching, empowering families and training professionals to support quote-unquote complex individuals. A mother to an ADHD++ family, Elaine co-hosts the Parenting with Impact podcast and has authored award-winning blogs, books, and programs, including Parenting ADHD Now, The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids, and Sanity School, which you'll hear her talk about during this interview. Elaine inspires others to navigate neurodiversity with confidence and compassion. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Elaine. All right, Elaine, thanks for being on the podcast.
It is truly my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. All right, we're going to jump in because we were just talking offline. Like, hey, what are we even talking about? I'm excited to talk about before and the now. So let's start with the before. Why don't you actually tell our listeners, because I don't know this part of your story, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were receiving as a young adult about what you were supposed to do after 18?
Whoa. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. And my parents are almost a generation apart. They're like 10 years apart. I was just talking about this with a girlfriend this weekend. So I grew up in the 70s. And so I was raised in this kind of weird time where half of the girls my age were getting these messages about, growing up and becoming professional women and moving into the workplace and being self-actuated. And half of us were getting messages like, you're supposed to grow up and find a man to support you and I got both those messages very clearly, not overtly. I think my mom was an early kind of, certainly an activist and if not a feminist, but like she was working on the ERA in the 70s. And so I got this one message that, women can do anything, but I got this other message that, I have to get off the phone at 5:15 when my husband walks in the door. So I had very different messages.
Oh my gosh. I'm just trying to imagine what that would be like in terms of that internal conflict.
It's funny because I think about it now, because a lot of my friends in the 70s, all my friends' moms went back to work, except for mine. My mom was really involved. She was a community activist. She did lots of great stuff, but my dad wanted her to be available to him. And that was their deal, right? They'd been married in the 50s and that was part of the bargain. And so I did have this, I would get mad at her, because I wanted something different for her and for me, I think. But on the other hand, I was not raised to go out and get a job, I don't think. I was raised to be a community volunteer. And then the world changed and I was expected to work. And that was a surprise. So what did I do? I went into nonprofit and then created a business that's basically a nonprofit,
Okay. And are you still, I don't actually even know this. Are you still in the Atlanta area?
I am.
Okay.
I am looking at the Midtown Atlanta skyline. I live in the heart of Atlanta.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So here you are kind of navigating all of these familial and society. And then it sounds like more economic kind of pressures. Some of them are conflicting and some of them are in sync, but leading to where you are today, has it always been nonprofit work?
No. So I left Atlanta. I went to school in the Northeast, went to school in Connecticut. I moved to New York on a fellowship. I pursued this kind of career mentality, I think. And it's a long story, but the world changed when the Webster decision came down. I came back to Atlanta actually to become a political activist. And I worked nationally for Planned Parenthood Federation as a Southern region political person. So I was doing this advocacy work when it was time to have kids. And I left that world. The joke was that I left Planned Parenthood when I was ready to plan my own parenthood, because the work was too intense and I really couldn't raise a family in that world at that time. So I left that and actually developed a small residential subdivision. And, I'm an ADD adult that I didn't know till I was in my 40s. So I've had a few different careers, but I did some real estate development. That was not my thing, but it was a great place to live. And then as I started having kids and I was doing pregnancy yoga as I was having babies. As I started having kids, my kids were struggling and I was struggling with them struggling. I often say that motherhood is the necessity of invention. I ended up doing what I do because the support I needed as a mom was not available. And so we created it, really.
I'm so excited to I want to jump right into it, but I want to ask one more question before we really start to dive into. So having kind of heard your journey, and you also just kind of shared, hey, I found out in my 40s that I am an adult with ADHD. And even just you peppering in, I was teaching yoga. I also started a
subdivision.
Subdivision. You're also doing nonprofit work. You're also doing advocacy for Planned Parenthood. I mean, I'm just picturing this beautifully weaving line back at veering back and forth of you're doing all these cool things, but also where do they overlap? What are the themes and all of this? And so regardless, I am getting to the question. I like to ask people kind of knowing what it is that you're leading up to, because I imagine if we also ask the question, hey, when you were raised in the 70s, what did you view as success at that point as a parent? But I think it's just helpful to ask that question now. Do you see yourself as successful knowing your journey had all of those twists and turns?
Well, I think a successful journey is having twists and turns and learning to dance with it. So yeah, I would say, when I look, so I was diagnosed in my early 40s and at that point I was really searching. I felt I was really lost. And when I found out I had both attention and learning issues, it was like my whole life made sense. I understood every decision I had made. I understood why I majored in something that I didn't like, but I didn't have to take tests. I began to get clear on the decisions I had made, and it allowed me to begin to be more conscious about making decisions moving forward without apology for myself, right? With a little more love, a little more self-forgiveness. Eventually, I can't say it happened in the first 3 months, but there had been a lot of beating myself up for what I hadn't done or having this circuitous path or not feeling confident, even though I was successful on the surface, all these things that began to make sense. And so it's going to sound corny, but the greatest success in your life is the work we do, I think, in coming to terms with ourselves and acceptance and with ourselves and self-love. And, as a mom, my husband and I were just talking about it, we've worked so hard to create an environment where our kids felt a strong sense of self. Does that mean that they don't struggle? No. Does that mean they don't have, ADD or depression or autism or whatever it is they struggle with? No. And does that mean it's all perfect for them? No. My joke is my next book is going to be my kids are all in their 20s. They're all in therapy and it's all my fault. But they're in therapy, right? They're doing that work because they feel safe enough and comfortable enough, and they understand the value of that work. And I wish I had done that when I was their age instead of, so much later, the coaching or the therapy or the combination. And oh, by the way, 2 of my kids are now become coaches.
I love it. Well, and I'm just thinking in my head, if you wrote that book, I would still buy it. I would still buy it and read it.
I'm not sure it needs any content. I think the title is really all it needs. I just need the time to get it out.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I so appreciate you kind of really exposing more of what that looked like and what that experience meant for you, not just for you personally and you and your husband, but also what it meant for parenting differently for your young adult children. So we're diving right in. And if there's anything else personally from your journey that you want to pepper in at some point, feel free to just mention it. But let's not wait any longer. What is it that you're doing right now?
So I run a company called Impact Parents. It was originally Impact ADHD. What I do is I bring neuro-informed coaching skills to parents and professionals to kind of change the dynamic of how we hold, how we meet, how we talk to, and work with young people of any age, all the way through young adulthood into their 30s, really, to help people approach the world from a more empowering, more strength-based, more positive way with good, healthy communication. I mean, that's really, in a nutshell, what it's all about. Is we call it the neuro-informed coach approach, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's really about, when I discovered coaching, I discovered a different way of being in the world that was very positive and affirming. And like when I had my kids, I used a midwife, not a doctor, because I wanted that empowerment approach. You know, I went in and I checked my urine and I weighed myself and all that when I was pregnant, because I was the one doing it. It wasn't the doctor, right? And it's like that with coaching. When we raise people, when we parent people, when we in a work environment, in a neuro-informed work environment, workplace, I'm doing a lot more work around professional development in this arena as well. When we change the way people think about other people, when we reduce assumptions and reduce judgment, we improve dynamics and connection and communication and teamwork and outcomes. Right. And it doesn't really matter what environment you're in. The one thing I knew when I was a teenager, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know I wanted to change the world. That was it. And when I started doing this work, what I wanted to do was to improve the medical model and to change the way that the medical community deals with people with chronic medical conditions. Because just because you have a diagnosis of something that's a chronic condition doesn't mean you're broken. But the medical model wants to make people broken so that they can fix them. And a lot of these conditions that we're talking about are not conditions to be fixed. They are brain wirings to be managed. And you have to learn how to manage it in the context of the world we live in, which is constantly changing. So I'm not sure if I completely answered the question, but... But that's my meandering answer.
You totally did. And I think that, I mean, honestly, the majority of my audience listening to this are parents, mostly right. Parents of young adults. Sometimes there's some, parents of early to like mid adolescence that are kind of getting ahead of themselves, thinking about the impending kind of transition to adulthood and what to expect and all of the pressures that exist there. And so another reason why I wanted you on the show, because I think what you're doing with Impact Parents is so needed for a lot of the parents that are listening. So, okay, let's just even talk logistics for a hot second, and then we'll kind of get more into the weeds too about kind of some of the exciting events that are coming up. But if somebody's interested in connecting with Impact Parents, what does that look like?
So, the truth is about 95% of the people in our community are members of the community. Maybe they're on a mailing list or maybe in a Facebook group or whatever, who never pay us a dime. Not the best business model, but it's what we got, right? Because we call ourselves a private sector business for the public good. So I didn't want to be a nonprofit. I didn't want to spend all my time raising money. So a lot of what we do is free. Like we have a podcast, Parenting with Impact. We do summits. You're going to be joining us this summer. I'm really excited. We do public education. We do a lot of information. We have a blog and all that. And then, so a lot of people will just come to impactparents.com and they'll sign up for something and get into the community that way, or there's some Facebook groups. Our programming, we teach neuro-informed coaching skills to parents and to professionals. Our Keystone program is called Sanity School for parents. There's Sanity School for teachers, which is an amazing training. And I can say that even though I created it, because I think I channeled it more than creating it. And it's iterative. We've kept it up to date. We've changed it over the years, so it continues to expand and grow. And then we do group coaching and private coaching. And we've been running coaching groups since October of 2011. So We used to have one. Now we have like 10. We have several different coaches that coach for us. Small group, based on the age of your kid. So if you have a young kid or a teenager or an older kid, in 2021, we started groups for parents of young adults. So we have 2 groups that we run twice a month for parents of young adults. And those are the most, Diane and I still lead those because I think partly because we have young adults and we still need it too. They're profoundly helpful because this parenting young adults is a whole different game. Like you're no longer the director. They are the director of their lives. And if they're not directing their lives, you're not going to get them to do that by telling them to do that. Mm-hmm. So the coach approach becomes a really powerful way to begin to shift the dynamic to more collaborative, to empower them to take ownership of their lives. Yeah. And it's particularly poignant with parents of young adults because very often by the time parents are listening to this conversation that you and I are having, it's because something's not going very well, or they're afraid it's not going very well, or they're worried about what's going to happen, or things are fractured, or doors are closed that used to be open. Like there's a lot of reasons that parents are concerned, and they have good reason to be concerned. And the concern isn't going to fix the problem, right? This concern's not going to guide the kid to independence and autonomy. Understanding it well enough to help them understand themselves well enough, that's going to turn the needle. Mm-hmm. That's what I think when parents can understand how important it is to focus on themselves so that they can create an environment that helps their kids be successful, that helps their kids be able to work with someone like you and move forward with it and feel empowered in it instead of working with you and then coming home and having the parents say the same thing they've always said that shuts them down and then has them feel like, why should I bother? Yeah. Right. When our kids are growing, we've got to be growing too. We got to keep growing because this world is wild. You know,
I was shaking my head no, and then I moved to yes. It is a wild world.
It is a wild world we're in, and it's constantly changing. And we need to adapt, and our kids need to adapt. And we are not raising our kids in the world we were raised in. Yeah, and we have to understand that it doesn't matter if we would never have done to our parents what our kids do to us. It doesn't matter. We didn't have, one of these things in our pocket, a supercomputer in our pocket, and exposure to the entire world. It's just a different world. And we need to catch up with that in a way and adapt to that differently as parents.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously I'm going to not so shamelessly plug the importance of the coaching piece. And obviously, I think seeking out that aptly named Sanity School, but also talk about the summit that you have coming up, because I think that this podcast is actually going to be released just before that. So I think if we can catch any last minute folks that stumble upon this interview, they can learn about the summit and sign up. So tell us what's happening this month.
Well, and hopefully people can sign up in advance. And if not, it's always available, right? So the summit is called Back on Track. It's our second year doing this summit, although the very first summit we did in 2012 was also on this topic about getting kids ready for post-high school. This summit's really designed for kids probably 16 to 18 and up, way up. And it's for parents and for professionals who feel like you're trying to support kids in your world who are late to launch for whatever reason or aren't quite launching on a traditional path or the trajectory you might have expected, and who want some guidance and some insights about how to do that in a way that is positive and empowering and constructive. I will tell you, and you and I have talked about this before, it's really hard to find professionals who will talk about what's going on with this population. I went to a leading expert in the world, New York Times best-selling psychologist who wrote the book on supporting parenting young adults and adolescents. And when I asked him to speak, he said to my community, he said, I don't know anything about neurodiversity. And I was like, wait a minute. Now, you're a psychologist. You should know something. I really can't speak to that audience. So it was very hard to find people like you and me and Diane Solomon and Sasha Hamdani and Jessica McCabe, who are willing to speak to this experience because we're in a whole new world and it's different. So it's a small summit. It's one day only. It's not like 3 days with 30 experts. It's one day, a dozen experts. because it's tight, it's focused, it's incisive, and it is going to be outrageously insightful and inspirational. Because I know who's coming, and it's going to be amazing.
And I will make sure that not only will we have information in the show notes for this podcast about it, but I'll just pay attention to my socials as well, because I've posted some information there, and then I'll just redirect everybody to this. And you were kind of hinting at it. If folks aren't able to show up live, they'll still be able to access it afterwards.
They can access it for free for 24 hours.
Okay.
And then that week, it's right now, you can buy the whole package in advance for half price. It's like $47 or something for all of it. I mean, it's a lot. And then, of course, it'll be available afterwards as well. You can always get the information. If you register now for free, it's your best bet. Again, maybe not the best business model, but we do what we can.
Well, I like the slogan that I certainly couldn't repeat it right in this moment, but when you said it earlier, I was like, okay, this is awesome, right? Private business, but
private sector business for the
yeah,
public good.
Yeah. See?
It's a Robin Hood business, basically.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We want to make sure that you get paid for the good work that you all are doing. So I'm going to ask maybe two more questions as we kind of wrap up. And then, like I said, everything in the show notes is going to be there. Please make sure you check it out. First question, saying that you've been leading the young adult parent support group twice a month for,
5 years.
Long time. Yeah. I'm just curious from your perspective, if there are any themes, maybe what's one theme that's been popping up kind of the last year. And if it's something that we haven't already discussed, I'm just kind of curious if maybe there's something that you are seeing in this process with your parent support group that maybe other parents would be like, oh my gosh, that's me. Or, again, just kind of normalizing what may be popping up with other parents outside of parent support groups right now.
Yeah. And normalizing is a great word for it. And I do want to be clear, this is not a support group. It's a coaching group. So, which is different. I mean, there's a lot of support in it, but it's a coaching group. There's work being done, right?
Okay.
The themes, and there's training that goes with it. The two things that come to me, one is we got to get ourselves out of the way so we can be present to what they're dealing with and their needs are. And when we are worried, when we are, whether it's catastrophizing or micromanaging or whatever, but they've got to be able to, or he's got to do this, or doesn't matter what our urgency is. When we are fiercely attached to their agenda, it's really hard for them. Like if we're holding the reins, it's very hard for them to pick them up. And so the part of the work when we have young adults who are not on the path we thought they'd be on, or who have fallen back off the path. Like we had one couple that was with us for a couple of years. They had a 30-year-old kid who ended up in addiction and ended up back home at 38 years old, right? And so they were trying to deal with, but he's got to go get a job. Well, he's got some work to do dealing with where he is before getting a job is going to be effective. So getting our agenda out of the way is probably the number one bit of work that we do, learning to let go without panic and to not have our emotional reactivity become what our kids are dealing with, so that they can't even deal with their own stuff because they're so busy trying to figure out how to calm us down, right? Or how to not calm us down. So that's probably the biggest issue that I see all the time with young adults. The other is, I kind of like to say, slow down to speed up. That we think we're trying to we need to light a fire under them. We need to keep them going. We've got to propel them forward. And I don't know if you've ever, if you remember when you had little kids and you were trying to get them out the door, and as soon as you started rushing, they would slow down to half speed. And it's kind of like that with young adults. Like the more it's a different manifestation of the same energy, right? The more we are holding fast and it's got to be a certain way, the slower they're going to go. So if we can slow down and meet their pace, and we talk about it as a marathon, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we have to pace ourselves for the long haul. And it may take a couple of years or more longer for these kids to really launch, but we want them to have the skills and the capacity to do that effectively when they do. And a lot of these kids have had a failure to launch. And I hate the term, but they have maybe not made it to college or didn't make it through college, or there was something, they've had enough little t traumas that have compounded over the years to a point where we need to give them a little space to heal from the pain of what it's been being a neurospicy kid growing up in this world. And we cannot underestimate the impact of whether they were diagnosed and not really well treated, which happened to a lot of us because we're only beginning to understand this stuff, or maybe they weren't diagnosed until late, or maybe we just didn't understand, or we were treating the wrong thing, whatever it was. The experience of growing up and living with that creates a traumatic response in the brain and the body. And so we've got to slow down and let them heal a little bit before we try to expect them to perform. And so the language I use with parents, and this is what I think I'll close with, is it's up to us to want more for them than we want from them. And to help them feel like whatever we're doing is because we really want for them whatever they want for themselves. And if it feels like we're saying that, but for them it feels like we just want from them to perform a certain way, they're going to shut down because they can't yet fulfill those expectations of performance. They need to feel like they have a voice and they have agency, and that we really want for them to help them figure out what they want for themselves, because they're young adults, and that's part of the journey is in those years is to figure out, what do I want for myself? And that's not so easy.
Elaine, I feel like I could just listen to you speak for like another couple hours, but for the sake of time, we are going to end on that note. I am beyond grateful for you taking the time to be a guest on the Success is Subjective podcast, sharing a little bit of your own personal journey, but then obviously spotlighting a lot of the really important work that you're doing with Impact Parents. Make sure we have all the links again in the show notes. Please check it out. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for being part of it and giving us this voice.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.